Happy tornado season, everybody. Tornado season. I'm going to play some Hawaiian music. Like that?
Better than tornado sirens, I guess.
Dude, it's crazy. The game's like last night. Like, I think maybe I'm aging myself, but I don't remember a spring like this.
Like an entire month is a tornado warning. Yeah, it's been bad.
I mean, how's it in Quincy? You guys are the same,
I mean,
right?
we're under a severe thunderstorm watch right now. So,
Oh, are you?
if I bail and head to the basement, sorry, Nick.
Dude, do the interview from there.
That's true.
Sirens and everything. Because if you get sucked up, then it's going to go viral.
True.
Nick, you're in St. Louis. How's that weather?
Exactly the same. We had storms move through last night. Now we seem to have the break in the action at the moment, but I know St. Louis City schools have already said they're closing early to send the kids home. So, which is something that seems to be recent, that all of a sudden we now send the kids home to make them somebody else's problem, which never happened when I was going to school.
We did that a week ago on a Friday. All schools got canceled early in all Metro Kansas City. It was weird. It was just, and then it rained, but it was nothing. Yeah, it was weird.
Hey, but Nick's right. I don't remember my entire childhood getting out of school for severe weather.
No.
Once. You prepared the kids to stay there. This is your tornado drill. That's it. Otherwise, you go to school.
Yeah, how many times you do the duck and cover drill in
That's
in
right,
class,
all the
right?
time.
Yeah, and the schools are all built out of cinder blocks. I mean, it's probably the safest structure out there.
Who knows? I'm sure there's some kind of region but this is why we do.
You're listening to Cap Chat, the #1 soccer recruitment podcast in the United States. This is Cap Chat.
Soccer. But hey, so Nick Bushell is the executive director for MYSA, which is the Missouri Youth Soccer Association. Every state has a governing body. I think some have a couple. I think California has 2, or am I dreaming that?
Yeah, California, a couple others, Texas, Ohio used to have 2. Now they've merged into 1. But it was all about the numbers of players when you applied to become an association. If you had enough, you could be 2 associations. But most of us, the vast majority of us are just a single association per state.
So we're going to obviously talk about National One League. That's the hot topic. And we got a bunch of questions from last week from parents, and then we got some questions. But talk of what does MYSA do? Like, what is the role of a state organization? What do you say you do here, Bob?
So we try to oversee and sanction competitive play and also all play. But the sanctioning part becomes much more in competitive play. We also do recreational. We also do special needs, anything like that. But those are us trying, yes, there are safety features that we're looking to make sure everybody follows and abides and things like that. But special needs, recreational, things like that, it's about making kids fall in love with the game of soccer so they progress to deeper and playing it, later in their lives and things. Competitive, we are part of U.S. Soccer, which is part of FIFA. And so we are kind of the ones that bring down their rules, their interpretations, what they think are best practices, things like that. We extend, insurance protections over tournaments, over clubs, make sure that we all have coverage. We go in and sanction tournaments to make sure that they're run correctly and safely within certain guidelines, making sure that there are athletic trainers at all the facilities and things like that. So, and then we do a lot of state functions, President's Cup, State Cup, the Olympic Developmental Program. And then as we get into it, the State League, which, will promote to National One League. And before that, it was Midwest Conference and National League. So we're kind of the go-between between the regional and national offices and the local state offices. And it's always interesting.
Talk about ODP for a moment. I don't want to. It seems like you guys are, I don't know if it's revamping or I'm seeing a lot more and hearing a lot more about ODP. Are you trying, I guess, revitalize ODP? Not that it may be needed, just kind of one.
Yeah, well, so, 15 years ago, ODP was the single pathway to the Olympic developmental program, to the Olympics. And how you got identified then, and I apologize, I should have shut that off. Since then, there's obviously become other pathways in, pathways through MLS Next, pathways through Player First with US Club, things like that. And so, we decided to take, because we are one of the only groups that has a very wide range of talent that plays for us. We notably made a shift. We still promote and work with the highest level players that we have, but we also wanted to become more encompassing and identify that not every player is going to make the U.S. men's national team. Not every player is going to make a D1 college team.
What?
And yeah, imagine that.
Doesn't
So,
seem
so
nice.
we decided that really our focus was to take the player the highest that his personal development can take them. And so for some players, maybe that's just making their high school team. For others, maybe it's getting them high enough that, to get them into an NAIA program or a D2 or D3 program. And then take those, the 1 or 2% and try to take them to, the national identification process and things like that. So I don't know that it's more of a revamp, more than rather an expansion to make sure that we're more encompassing of all players out there. And I think that's made a huge difference in what we do.
Yeah, so you would say, I would even say it sounds more inclusive, and maybe driving to get more players involved with ODP, whereas maybe for the parents, that's something that they're not used to hearing because they thought it was more selective when they were younger. Are you saying that's kind of a change?
Yeah, definitely. And we've brought it down. It's a unique experience, the ODP program, because we're not there to, have you compete on a daily or weekly basis against your teammates and things like that, or against, we are more like broadening skills that your club is already putting into you. You play for your club first and foremost, and without a doubt. So we are that supplementary piece, and we've gone down to where, we have usual evens and U12s that, it's more of a training experience than a identification, because if we're identifying quote elite players at U12, then we're doing our job completely wrong. But if we are about developing players to the point where they can be identified later on by other people, then we're doing our job completely right. And that's really, the change that we really look to, and why it's done so well in the past couple of years.
I should ask this question first, Nick, and I lose track of time. I feel like you've been, and I'm not trying to make you sound old, but I feel like you've been
I
with
am
MYSA for 20 years, right?
No, I have been this is my 10th year in Missouri Youth Soccer, but I've been around for 25 years, executive director of Missouri Rush. At one point I was the president. Before that, I was the vice president, was president of Avalon FC, which is the club that became Missouri Rush. Yes, I am old, Josh, and I've seen a lot in my lifetime.
Well, I thought for some reason you've been at this helm longer though, so that's good though. No, I knew you've been around for a while, and yeah, so gotta love the game. So okay, so let's kind of Tyler. Any more questions? Sorry about what MYSA does before I go into National One League. I
Let's
didn't
go to it.
switch topics. Okay,
Switch it.
so yeah, so we even we get some like we're clapping. Here we go. Thanks for the first part. Now let's get to the real nuts and bolts here. Okay, I'm gonna let you explain. So the 10,000 foot view, Nick, of what is happening and what's going on, and then we'll kind of dive into some questions. I'd rather hear from an expert.
So once upon a time, in a land not so far away, there was a game called soccer. And rather than having a clear and decisive pathway about how to advance your game, you had multiple pathways and leagues and things like that all claimed they were the best thing for you. Some went nowhere. Some went to, the men's national team. Some went to the MLS. But it was very scattered. It was not very organized, created pain, heartache, between clubs, between parents, everybody else. So two things had happened. US Club and USYS had started talking about 2 years ago about what they could possibly do to ease a little of that, to make this more about the player rather than the competition between the associations. Around that time, then, soccer also created their vision of a pathway and what that pathway would look like. Amazingly enough, all those people talked and kind of got along and decided that we were one small step of, something else that's even bigger. The pathway for U.S. soccer is way more than National One League. I mean, I think most of the leagues out there, whether it's MLS Next or whether it's GA or whether it's ECNL, have all signed up to talk about how we work better to create a unified pathway for a player. U.S. Soccer has said on no uncertain terms they want a pathway that a player can see when he steps into the game and see how that looks all the way to his horizon line that hopefully keeps him in the game. Even after, you know, wherever he stops playing, then hopefully he becomes a coach, a referee, or something that keeps them attracted. At the same time, US Club and USYS thought it was, something that hadn't been done. US Club was a branch that was removed from USYS a number of years ago. So this kind of, brought in the idea that we need to do some things together. And, each looked at their strengths, each looked at their weaknesses. USYS's strength was always team v team platform, the old Midwest Regional League, Midwest Conference, things like that. ECNL and ECNL-RL always had identified with the club v club portion of it. So we ended up coming together where, there was a line that was team v team where we are at, and a line that is club v club, which is where ECNL are at. And they sent out requests for proposals by groups and things like that. We were very lucky because of our history with National League and Midwest Regional League and things like that. And then my DOC, Chris McGill, who came in with 8 years of running NPL experience. It worked really well that we were able to be chosen as the operator for Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota. So, yeah, but the idea is to help get a realistic pathway where teams aren't driving by each other to go play somebody else, to save money and not get on that airplane just for the reason of getting on an airplane to play somebody, to find a way to, definitely, if you need to play people in other areas to keep at your competitive level, then that's what should happen. But many teams don't have to do that in a very early time. And so this idea is we match them up as they progress. They move up and finally hit the tier one where, they're playing all the teams in this 5-state area. And then, we promote those teams up. They go play conference finals against the ECNL RL teams. So all of a sudden we're playing teams in our own area. And imagine that, it might save some money, might save some time, and maybe even develops players. So that's us in a nutshell.
So if you're looking at one, congratulations on being a league operator. So that's awesome. I was very excited for you guys. I'm a little biased, but I am, living in Missouri. So there's tier 3, tier 2, tier 1. Can we kind of talk about the differences? Yeah, I know you briefly mentioned travel.
You've got, and we're going to be renaming it. Lots of changes. This thing got off the ground so quick that we're finding different things we have to be done. But you start out at tier 3. Tier 3 is going to be renamed probably into a qualifying league or something like that. But this is your SLISAs. This is our old MADL league that will now become our state league, things like that. It is within your market. It is, you are playing up to a level where you finally end at that top portion, SLISA's Premier Division, our state league, things like that. And then, through that, through that quote tier 3 that we're not going to call tier 3 anymore. We're going to then promote those teams through proper promotion and relegation up into tier 2. Tier 2 then going to have a lot of teams there. And most of our interest is tier 2. And that's great because that's where a lot of teams should be. Tier 2 is geographic based. And so that's, everything east of Columbia or west of Columbia or, Omaha or Omaha/Des Moines, things like that, to where, okay, maybe there's a little bit of drive, but there's very little limited overnight travel. Again, we're not driving past somebody to play somebody else that's already at that same level with us. And we're keeping those teams all working together to travel down the same path under a unified set of national rules, which, to give you an idea, we're talking more than 10,000 teams all operating under the same league, under the same rules, which pretty incredible, and then we play through that. We keep working. And again, you get promoted to tier 1. Tier 1 then covers the 5-state area. So tier 1 now, we're to a point where, all right, so you've got a 9-team division. You're going to have 8 teams in there, or 8 games in there. 6 of those games, we're probably going to name a location that you're going to come to. Probably one weekend in St. Louis, one weekend in Kansas City, one weekend in Omaha, so we all play fair. Okay? Then you might have 2 within region games that you're just going to self-schedule those. But again, we are limiting travel to get those teams moving to the right place to play the right teams, things like that. And then when we finish that up, we take the best of the best there, and then we set up, well, we don't set up, it is set up for us to where the conference finals brings the ECNL RL teams that are playing at the top of their game to match up in regional championships. So it's a pretty big undertaking, but again, it's something that you can really feel good about what you're doing because you really feel like you're impacting the sport in the right way. So, and that's where we come in.
And so it's really great, if I'm seeing this correctly, is it's really great for the clubs that don't have the big platform.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you got one really good team, but U13s are strong, U14s are not. So you put U13 in here and you can advance.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's what really makes us different from most of the other, leagues out there. Most of them are Club B Club, and Club B Club is good in its own right, because if you have a lot of high level teams and you have, those teams that can all travel as one, you can save costs that way. And there's nothing wrong with that. But small clubs, mid-level clubs that are still developing, where, like you said, Josh, you've got 2 teams playing in, that would be the equivalent of playing in tier 1. Then you've got 3 teams that are playing at the equivalent of tier 2, and 2 teams that are just getting in at, the old tier 3. There was no way to do that in a Club B Club structure, where we don't focus on club travel, we focus on team travel, and that is completely at the level of the team. And coming from what used to be a very small club, Avalon had 12 teams, and going into Midwest Regional League, I really appreciated what that was able to do, because we were able to go play at some pretty high levels, even though we weren't a real big club.
And then, so currently, this may not relate to everyone else across the United States, but you have the MADL, which one of our teams play in. So I know we can't call it tier 3. We'll just call it the Tyler League just for now.
Perfect.
Hypothetically, maybe it sticks. I don't know, but that third tier, is that, what age does that start at, and is that year round?
13 to 18 will play year round for the 13s and 14s. Of course, we will not have, we'll have seasonal play based on the high schools for the older kids, 15 and older. Unique experiences there, because we've got high school boys up in Omaha and Iowa that need to play their club ball in the fall. And then, Missouri and Kansas need to play it in the spring. So there's some inner workings there where we're hoping that we are able to bring 2 teams up to the conference level to get them some play, just so, we can offer both those groups the ability to play at that next level.
Yeah. Okay. Tyler, I feel like you've been itching to. Sorry, I've been.
No, no, the questions have been great. Nick's been great. You mentioned we're kind of joking about the naming things. I feel like sometimes the importance of naming um, just for clarity purposes across the country, and if we have promotion in some leagues and not in others, you know, how do you think there's a way that we can get all of the naming of the leagues correct to
Well, and
clarity?
part of it is realizing that all of our demographics are vastly different. So those namings aren't always exactly the same, which is why I think they're going away from a tier 3. And I have no problems with that. We'll name it, whether it's, the Tyler and Tyler League or something like that.
The stick.
We'll name it something correct. But when I went out and ran Desert Conference for a couple of seasons, it was very different. Here you had Midwest Conference where you had Premier One, Premier Two. Out there's such a wide expanse of you know area out there. You really only worked with one tier because there just didn't have the population levels necessarily to fill all those other tiers. So I agree with you, Tyler, that it's important to have proper description, but we have to leave a little wiggle room in there because, how you play your soccer in Phoenix looks very different than how you play your soccer in St. Louis, which looks completely different than how you play your soccer in Minnesota. The seasons are different, you know, the number of competitors in the marketplace is different and things like that. So not, tier 1 should be for everybody. And we're hoping, I believe that the tier 2 is that nice balance of teams that are working into tier 1. But I believe they want that tier 3 to be more, identifiable to what is in your market and what that looks like, you know.
Okay. Yeah, so like a regional approach to understanding your area and the teams that are in there, graduating to teams that can be competitive across the national level.
Correct.
I think that clarifies a lot for people that are asking that question.
Yeah. And it's always remembering that we are all in our own little bubble. And what we see and do in our bubble is completely different than somebody else's bubble, 500 miles away, 1,000 miles away. Soccer looks very different all over the place.
I think one the big topic is like college exposure on these playoffs, or were they, if you're in tier 1, will you be able to participate in an RL showcase?
Yes. Yes. So that the RL showcase, part of that is a redesign to bring those teams together and then use that as, coach identification and things like that to bring those college coaches in. Absolutely. That's one of the reasons to do this, because you had a whole lot of individual teams with really quality players that maybe struggled to get that same ID experience that some of the other ones did.
Yeah. So really, if I'm saying this out loud, like if you're a pretty good player, let's say, and you have a smaller club that let's say it's accepted into the National One League, tier 1, so they're accepted. Then you have another club in your same town that has RL, but the team's not, let's just say it's a mid-tier RL team, but you end up at the same place.
Right.
If you come over to the team that's National One League, but you like the coaches better, you end up at the same place.
Right. And that's the whole idea. And it should come down to, how's your relationship with the coach? Your coach should be your most important consideration when you're looking at that team of what level is the coach at and how can they help you progress as a player and things like that. And that's really important. And also then taking, and I don't want to diminish these college showcases, but it's also taking your college career onto your own shoulders and realize that if you aren't writing the letters to the college coaches, if you aren't getting yourself out there and identifying the right college for your major and your lifestyle and things like that, that falls on you. And it doesn't matter how many showcases you go to, you have to work hard to find the right college fit.
You make that sound so easy.
It's because I don't have to do it.
Yeah. I'm trying to pull up some questions here. Go ahead.
Well, so just to be clear, now there isn't a promotion pathway into the ECNL RL as a next level, right? Those are still separate entities as far as league play.
There is, if a club gets to the point where they have quality teams in each group and an ECRL type structure makes sense for them, then there will be invites given, and we will help lift those teams. If that's right for that club, then great. If not, we'll consistently give them a product to play in. But there's no problem with the idea that a club that's working to become more can easily, I don't want to say easily because it's not easy, but can become a club based group if they want to.
All right, we're gonna do some
Warning, some viewers may find the following footage deeply disturbing.
CapChat Live presents Parent Questions from the Internet.
Offside.
So I'm gonna read these. So I apologize if they're written terribly, but
and sorry if it's just people like cussing out Josh and I. We'll try to filter through those to get to the actual question.
All right, so here's one. Boredom 23. Another top-tier league. We have heard that once or twice. It will discharge more and cost more, alienating even more potential prospects of the game. So he says it just allows clubs to charge more and to be exclusive on who makes these teams, all because it's the top league. Any comments on that?
I would say that, the league is what you make it. And some leagues are very good. Some leagues leave a lot to be desired. And that is up to the coach and the club to identify, which ones. You're absolutely right that there's too many, quote, national leagues that promote to, quote, the highest level, because some of them have no end game at all. You're simply, playing in a group of games that are going to fly you all across the country or drive you for hours. I would say that this is a reduction of leagues because, you've got NPL and NL that have now become National One League, and they've identified with ECNL RL to get into a developmental alignment with them. So I would say overall it's a reduction of duplication and of focus. I would say that league cost is, as far, and I can't comment on every league and what their pricing is. We made sure that we are competitive in the marketplace and we cover our cost. We are a nonprofit organization that's been around for almost 50 years. It is, I don't make $1 more running National One League than if we didn't run it. We run National One League because we felt it was important to bring the knowledge we had to bear on something like this, because it was important to get it off the ground right. But it's, with a nonprofit, money is not our focus. We want to, honestly do the right thing in the marketplace. And, overall, I would say that leagues and clubs, you should ask a lot of questions about what those expenses look like, because, that you pay a ton of money and every parent needs to have a thorough understanding of what that money is being spent on by the club and the league. That is part of a parent's responsibility to make sure that they are aligning themselves in a way that is okay. There's some really expensive clubs out there.
And Nick mentioned this. They're focused on travel and shortening travel. I know dues are one thing, but if you're flying all over the country, who cares what the dues are? You're going to pay more in your travel, and it seems like the idea of this is to reduce travel and be
absolutely
cognizant of travel costs, which is great.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, you brought that up in the very beginning, that you don't want to, and I thought that was a good line. If I hope I don't butcher, you don't want to drive past a competitive team to play another good team. So I thought that point was really good. Yeah, we get a lot of the money grab quotes. They think it's just making money.
It's because they're so easy.
Yeah, that's
I
true. That
mean,
is
when you look at some of them, they're really easy to pick out. But there's also, I would say, a majority that are out there doing this for the right reasons, and they get forgotten about or passed by, because of the flash of some of the other ones.
no. I'm obviously a big fan. I like it. I think it's great for the club to be able to get into. I don't think the cost is that astronomical. I think it was right in line with. But I think this is a fantastic way to be able to compete for clubs that don't have all five levels. And I think this is great. I was very excited about it. It's not. Yes, it's a new league, but like you said, you're combining two leagues. So it I don't know if it. I think people get small sided, but I think it's fantastic that the team based platform comes in. Players have the opportunity to play. I think it certainly helps smaller clubs because
Yes.
this things were shifting. That if you couldn't get into a national platform, you were the closing doors were having to merge. Because that was what all the parents care about, right or wrong or indifferent. And so now this really gives smaller clubs that have, like you said, a really good coach and involvement in that they can get into and play higher level competition and get promoted. And I think this is absolutely brilliant. I'm very, very, very excited about it. So Tyler, you can say nice things too.
Is that your only stupid question from the internet?
Oh no, yeah, I got
We
another
can
one.
do one more. We can do one more.
Yeah. Okay, this one may not be too dumb, but so I don't know this. I don't know what he's referring to. A9 Soccer says, what is the point of this without national standards that align with the new licensing pathway?
So that's a great question. And I will
Here it
say
comes.
one step at a time. So, like I said at the very beginning, you have U.S. Soccer creating a pathway that is above all of this. That will be about coach education. That will be about making sure we're all doing the same thing correctly. Getting credit hours for coaches to continue to educate themselves. So that there's a lot that is still coming, not only in National One League, but from U.S. Soccer overall. They've made a huge commitment to bring soccer further along the pathway that many of us have asked for years. That they needed to take some ownership and not just let the people kind of self-govern, because that never works, right? But and I think that in light of sports, just youth sports in general, and the monetization of that sport, and the overall sports, the venture capital money that's going into it, I think it's you know incredibly important that U.S. soccer be able to take a stand and have a vision and hold all of us responsible. I mean, we are told that we represent U.S. soccer in the state, and they are coming to us with a set of expectations that we are to live up to. And I think that's great. And then we can take that to the clubs, and they need to have that same level of responsibility.
So, and this is a comment. Steve Jones 591. I got no problem reading the name out loud because you posted on a public post. So, but Steve Jones 591, E64 and MPL had no choice. They're both dying leagues. It's still going to be the same thing going forward, though. Nothing really changes in the hierarchy of things. This new N1 league and EA are dying on the vine. They're just trying to prevent the inevitable. Not a question, just a
lot of statements there for Nick.
Yeah, a lot
Kind
of
of a
statements.
statement.
He has to live in an area that their league is not very good.
And look, you've got to find what fits you and your player first and foremost. And what's gonna advance their skills as far as they could go. It's not gonna matter if you don't find what fits your player. You can pay enormous sums of money and never get anything out of it. And you can go play MLS Next, which is a fantastic program. You can play ECNL, which is a fantastic program, but it's got to be for the right players. That it's also a flawed system in that none of us know what these players are going to be 3 years from now. And your weakest player at U13 may be your best player at U17. So keeping them playing is so much more important than being able to say you play in such and such league. And, I have opinions about all the leagues, but, none of those opinions really matter when it comes to somebody else's player. It's only my own. And, I was lucky enough to have 2 sons go through the system and had a great experience. Both chose to go in the Air Force instead. It doesn't mean that the system was a failure. It just simply means that, they chose a different path. And I think that's for everybody. And to mean anybody's program, if that program is working for your individual player, go for it. Absolutely.
It's a fantastic answer. Wow, I really like that. Thank you, Nick. So we have
Warning. Some viewers may find the following footage
we
deeply
survived.
disturbing.
We survived.
Capchat Live presents
Yeah.
Parent questions
You
from
never
the
know what you're gonna get with those.
Some viewers
Those are
may
always
find the
my
following
favorite.
footage deeply disturbing.
So,
Capchat
Nick,
Live presents
thanks for joining us.
Parent questions from
Nick
the internet.
And Tyler, thanks for asking the questions here about the new National 1 League, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier Tylers.
There you
That's-
go.
Yeah, that's exciting. But so, Tyler, any final question here for you?
Nick, look, MYSA. I know the rule is three referees for a tournament game. Stop over and roll with it.
I do.
One of those referees, I would rather have 2 referees and a parent official. We got to change that for our state of Missouri. Just say, okay, a two-man officiating is better than a 2 referees and a parent referee for all of time.
And I don't disagree with you, Tyler, but that is so far out of our hands. And we have nothing to do with that. We are told what to do with that by U.S. And here's the thing. You have to have a 3-man crew at 11v11. Below 11v11, that is not a restriction. Because it's
Hey, that's good for club coaches, Josh, what he said there.
all right. Okay. I think that if we learn to have respect for the game officials, and we learn, especially with young game officials, that they're learning the game right along with the players, we would have enough referees that this would be a non-issue. And the shortage of referees is directly created by the parents and the coaches that can't identify that people make mistakes on the field. And not all of those mistakes are made by players. They're made by coaches, and refs. And at the end of the day, it's going to be okay. If it wasn't the right way to throw in the ball, it's okay. And that's really, if we could kind of get that part through all of our thick little heads, we would be in a much better situation no matter what, Tyler. How about that?
Amen. We preach that all the time on the show, so you're preaching with us.
That's good. I did see at a showcase. I was in Cincinnati, and a parent got kicked out. I'm like, that's it's
showcase. Yeah, great
yeah,
word.
showcase. Yeah. I mean,
The results don't matter.
yeah,
Still getting kicked out.
yeah. Guess whose kid didn't get recruited? But anyway,
Right,
so
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Well, Nick, I appreciate your time. I know you answered everything that I think that was on our mind, at least my mind, and thanks for diving into it. I think this is a really just such a good thing. I think. No, I'm not saying anything is bad, but yeah, this is such a good step, and I'm very excited about it, and yeah, excited to continue to watch this league grow, and
Yeah,
just
anytime, guys.
Love it.
I love
Love
it, and love what we're doing. Keep going, and I appreciate the time and letting you guys, letting me vent on a few things to you guys. So that's always good.
all right, guys, happy day.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
Nick.
you.